Hello! Our story begins inside the Jedi Temple, where young Anakin Skywalker was walking around. He was inside the training area, peeking indoors and searching for an individual training. Just anyone, no one in particular. Anakin had a fascination with lightsabers, and he always wanted to see them in action. At the moment, he was supposed to be in class, but that was boring and he wanted something new, adventurous. Anakin snuck into a room as he heard one of his instructors calling out his name. He could see two instructors marching through the hall, as the instructor sent a young Jedi Knight to track Anakin down and find him while bringing him back to class. Without a chance to check the room before he entered, Skywalker dipped into the closest training area and closed the door behind him. The Knight stormed past, so she never saw him, which was good. Anakin could hear the movement of lightsabers, and a grin formed on his face as he saw something incredible, and his jaw dropped. There was a Jedi Master in the middle of the room spinning two gigantic lightsabers. The Jedi was a big creature, one Anakin hadn't ever seen before. The individual didn't seem to notice him entering as he spun two double-bladed lightsabers in the air and flipped over himself, landing on the ground with a thud. Anakin smiled as he quietly moved over to the bleachers in the room. The Jedi's weapon spun around as he blocked shots before using the Force to throw the small training droids into the ground and pointed his lightsaber towards Skywalker. The boy looked at the massive blade with awe as Krell asked who he was. Anakin looked towards the door and then back and apologized. He expressed that he was in a boring class and he wanted to sneak out to watch a Jedi train. Pong hadn't ever seen Anakin before. Not that he frequented the youngling halls, but still, his face wasn't familiar. Pong Krell deignited his lightsabers and introduced himself, asking for Anakin's name, which was given. A small back and forth followed as Krell learned that Anakin was related to the Qui-Gon mission to Tatooine and Naboo. It had been 7 months since Qui-Gon fell at the hands of a Sith assassin. Krell knew about it, but he had forgotten, never really looking into anything other than the surface-level information. He asked the boy how he was handling the change, and as he asked, a door opened, and a knight walked in, calling Anakin by name and requesting him to the class. She apologized to Master Krell for interrupting his study session. He looked over and bowed, telling her that the instructor would receive a pass from him. She was free to go. He and young Skywalker were discussing his time here inside the temple. The young knight smiled and bowed before leaving the room. Pong turned back and sat down. The two of them spoke about Anakin's experiences within the temple and how he felt about everything around him. Krell could see how affected by the change Anakin was through the first few short sentences. He continued, prodding a little as he gained more insight into this young Jedi's experience. After about 20 minutes or so, another instructor walked into the room, and the young Jedi Knight was with him. The elder Jedi asked to have Anakin back in the instruction chambers. It was urgent that he be present for the lessons. Krell told the instructor that he'd bring him back, and the Jedi Knight nodded in agreement. The instructor understood, but he also expressed that this lesson would be very important for the next test. Anakin needed to understand the simplicities of galactic relations. Krell nodded his head and turned back, telling Anakin that he should go, and then insisting that he should return here at a specific time every day, if he could at least. Krell always reserved this location, and he spent a great deal of time inside this training facility, harnessing and mastering his skills. Anakin ran off with the instructor, and when the following day came around, he found himself in the training hall with Pong. The Jedi Master enamored Anakin. He was large, strong, masterful, and so interesting. A lot of this was because Krell had a very commanding voice, even if it wasn't intentional. Not to mention his lightsaber handling was very impressive. It was the greatest he'd ever seen in his short stay within the temple. The two of them spoke extensively, and it was through Krell that Anakin actually started taking his studies seriously. The way Pong presented it was much more alluring to Anakin. The whole concept of work hard, play hard was something Anakin could understand, but never thought about applying to his Jedi studies. There wasn't a ton of formal education on Tatooine, and that wasn't Anakin's fault, so Krell spoke to Anakin in a way that he would understand, promising to teach him how to wield a Boken stick and begin sparring with him, but he had to bring his report card to him every month. If he didn't keep up with his studies, then they would stop. Anakin took this very seriously and applied it. Due to him not getting along with his peers, and quite a few of them picking on him, Anakin was able to find comfort in the Jedi Master. It wasn't like they were best friends or anything, but when Anakin went to the lunch hall, he could always pick between Barriss, who was a year younger than him, or Krell. Typically, lunch shifts would change for classes on certain days, so when Barriss's class wasn't on break, Anakin could spend time with Krell. It was even better for Anakin because he was introduced to other Jedi Knights and Masters that Krell was friendly with. For example, Master Imogundi was someone Anakin spent a lot of time around. These alien Jedi Masters were all welcoming towards Anakin. While what Krell was doing wasn't exactly rule-breaking as a feat, it wasn't exactly the most encouraged method of instructing. But Pong understood that for Anakin it was important, especially as an older student, to have some semblance of connection. As a true Jedi, it would be imperative that they loosen those connections as they got older, and focus on the true path of a Jedi. But for the time being, it was just making Anakin comfortable. Their practice with the Boken stick really brought out the best in Anakin. It wasn't like he wasn't intelligent, he just never gave himself the room to bloom. So when he had someone in his corner pushing him to be the best version of himself, he actually excelled. Krell's intention was for them to get to a point where Anakin could continue to grow on his own, so that they could begin to separate. Not that Pong didn't want anything to do with Anakin, more so, he wanted the boy to feel like he wasn't alone or separated from people his own age. The students could be mean, and younglings, like normal kids, could pick on others. Now that Anakin was getting a grip on his emotions, finding an extracurricular that brought him happiness, and gaining confidence, there was a chance for him to rapidly excel among his peers. Because the two Jedi spent so much time around each other, Krell decided that he would approach the High Council about training Anakin. It was obvious, the two of them formed a strong bond. Anakin respected Pong as an elder, something he had a harder time doing with the non-present Obi-Wan. The tragedy is, with Obi-Wan, he wasn't choosing to ignore Anakin. He was teaching himself everything he could so he could instruct his young Jedi friend. Kenobi didn't believe he was qualified enough to train Anakin, and he knew he'd never beat Qui-Gon, so that stressed him out about all the little things. His fear of being inadequate for Anakin kept him away from the boy, especially because it wasn't commonplace for Jedi Knights to hang around younglings. The High Council took Pong's suggestion to train young Skywalker, and decided that it was probably a good idea. The two of them had an established bond with each other, and it would probably be a wiser decision than allowing Kenobi to go through with it, even though, by this point, it had been long past a year since they allowed him to be Anakin's instructor. The council told Pong that if he wanted to train Anakin, he and Obi-Wan would need to work out a deal. This was between the two of them. Krell thanked the council for their understanding and left. Pong would spend a couple days coming up with a statement and a rationale for why he should be responsible for training Anakin. The two of them met in the garden of the temple and began the discussion. Obi-Wan told Krell that he promised his master that he would train the boy. It was a promise to a dying master. Pong was familiar with this, and so he made a proposition in accordance to it. Perhaps Qui-Gon simply made Obi-Wan promise that because he knew the council wouldn't allow Anakin to become a Jedi without it. He told Obi-Wan that if he allowed Krell to train Anakin, then he would be fulfilling his promise to Qui-Gon. He continued further and suggested that it would take the burden off of him and he could continue to be a friend to Anakin, while an experienced master could handle someone who was clearly unorthodox. Anakin would be challenging for any Jedi, especially a master, but an inexperienced master could prohibit his growth or encourage bad habits unintentionally. If it was Qui-Gon's promise that he wanted to keep, then let Pong take the burden of it. He promised Obi-Wan that he wouldn't fail Anakin, and he wouldn't fail either Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan. This was something he believed he could excel in. Obi-Wan felt bad though. He told Pong that he had been spending hours every day researching on how to train Anakin. Krell put his hand on Obi-Wan's shoulder, reassuring him. Obi-Wan was a fine Jedi, and he would make a terrific Jedi Master, but it didn't have to be his burden to train someone that should be kept for an experienced master. It's why Qui-Gon wanted to train him before his unfortunate passing. He then suggested that Kenobi, if he didn't have a student by the time Anakin became a Padawan, he could sit in on lessons and help out. Obi-Wan eventually caved. These were all fantastic points, and he couldn't really refute them. He just asked that he explain the situation to Anakin himself. Pong smiled and nodded his head, telling Obi-Wan to do what he must. Obi-Wan explained everything to Anakin eventually, expressing that Pong and Anakin had already created a strong connection, one that hadn't been formed between the two of them yet. He believed that Anakin would be strong with Pong, and he reaffirmed that he would always be by his side if he needed him. As Obi-Wan and Krell made their exchange, Obi-Wan felt a huge burden get removed from his shoulders. He was always his harshest critic, and now he could begin approaching life as a knight with a little more certainty and actually heal from the loss of his master. He trusted Krell's instincts and believed this was the best decision for the two of them to make. Skywalker and Krell for the following 2 years would continue their training, alongside that of Anakin's studies. Due to the dynamic between them, Anakin started getting placements inside of honor classes and excelling through his youngling training, and even getting a chance to get his lightsaber. Though there was a request for Krell to save his mother, and despite Krell being a little uneasy about going so far into the Outer Rim, he, for Anakin's birthday, did. He was able to find a place within the core world of Chandrilia that was accepting refugees from the Outer Rim. Essentially, it was a program to get former slaves, criminals, gamblers, pirates, or whatever else out of their systems and into a new one, and then funnel them out into society as changed people. Krell went to Tatooine, found Watto's shop, picked the Toydarian out of the air, slammed him into the wall with such force it shattered his wings and vertebrae, and then Krell asked the Toydarian where Shmi was. He got his answer and took her off of Tatooine. He asked for her to create a hologram for Anakin, and he would take it to her son, and once everything was established for her, he'd bring Anakin to her home. She was so thankful. As a mother, she only wanted the best for her son, but she really did feel like the Jedi had abandoned her in the Outer Rim, along with the rest of the slaves. Pong had assumed that Qui-Gon informed the Council, but after he returned to Coruscant and gave Anakin his gift, he went directly to the High Council. He asked them about Qui-Gon's reports from the Outer Rim. They didn't mention anything, suggesting that there was the case for Maul and the boy, but that was about it. The Jedi weren't really informed, but at the same time, it wasn't exactly something they could just do. Krell understood that. He knew that the Jedi's mandate typically aligned with the Republic, so he was suggesting that the Council make a suggestion to the Senate, one about the Outer Rim and potential of conquering it. The Jedi weren't all-powerful alone, and without an official mandate from the Senate, they'd be going up against the Hutt Empire alone, especially on Tatooine, not to mention the other criminal syndicates. The Council was unnerved by this, not fully grasping the situation on Tatooine due to Qui-Gon's descriptions and Pong's as well. They did promise that they would propose a change to the Republic. Anakin was overjoyed with the message from his mother, and shortly before Anakin became a Padawan, the two of them went to Chandrilia where he could see her in person and experience her hugs all over again. It was a life-changing experience for Skywalker, and what followed such an experience was his ascension to the rank of Padawan at the age of 12. He had just turned that age and the Council permitted Anakin's ascension. He was far beyond his peers, not just in physical usage of the Force, but understanding of the Force alongside that of his lessons. He wasn't the top of his class, but he was very close to it. Anakin just excelled at other things, which encouraged the Council and his youngling instructors to promote him to Padawan. When Anakin Skywalker became Krell's student, it was like nothing had changed. They had nearly 2 years of time together, and Pong was a Jedi who brought his mother to a new home where she could be safe, which was more than he could ever ask for. Despite Krell having such a strong presence, without the onset of a war, he was actually a great Jedi. There was nothing that made him feel lesser about sentience. He was in total harmony with himself and the Force, and he instilled those lessons onto Anakin. As a young student, Skywalker thrived off of Krell's lessons, and because they spent so much time working with their bow and sticks, when they actually were allowed to work with their lightsabers, they were able to get straight off to the races. What benefited Anakin the most was the fact that Krell did not allow any external noise to get through. He understood that there were outsiders that wanted to turn Anakin into something else. Due to his balance and harmony within himself, Krell was able to focus on Anakin's training, but also understanding that there was either one or multiple individuals that wanted to use Anakin's powers for evil. The issue is, he didn't know what it was. Krell informed the Council about these ripples to the Force, which kept them alert, but it didn't give them any insight into who it could be. In the meantime, the Senate was voting on a bill to grow a military of 13 million strong and deploy it into the Outer Rim. For Palpatine, this was going to ruin the tour, so he couldn't have it. He tried to do anything to stop the bill from going through. The Senate was mortified by the information revealed by the Jedi, not to mention the fact that the corporations with representatives inside the Republic believed they could make credits in the Outer Rim. So Palpatine, with no ability to interact with Skywalker, decided to mess this up. He wouldn't openly do it, but he would allow the Republic to make critical mistakes while liberating the Outer Rim. So in motivation, they would come off as heroes, but in action they would look like self-righteous businesses looking for more control over a people exploited by the crime families. It would all work in his favor in the long run. That was the point. As he was preparing for this, he sent Dooku to the Outer Rim to unify the crime families, so that a real war could aggravate the people and turn them against the Senate. It would give Palpatine more executive powers to win this war, and control its outcome, so he could prepare for the Clone Wars. This was just a benefit. Sure, not planned, but something he could make good use of. Palpatine knew the Jedi would dive directly into the Outer Rim with a Senate mandate, and that's exactly what happened. Krell, on the other hand, kept Anakin far from the combat. He believed in the war, and thought that the Jedi were doing the morally right thing. joining up with 13 million brave volunteers as they went to destroy the remaining crime families. Anakin wasn't worried about his mother being a casualty in the war, so he could actually focus on his studies, which he only continued to excel at. Krell kept close tabs on everything in the war, including council sessions made public to the Jedi, Senate sessions, moves by the Chancellor and the Grand Master, as well as interest in battle lines across the Outer Rim. What Krell noticed was how insanely tied to the Hutts Dooku became. It wasn't super public information, but the Jedi Council had spotted Dooku speaking to the Hutts on numerous occasions. The Jedi had scouts in the Outer Rim to help with hostile takeovers. Essentially, Dooku was giving the crime syndicates the incentive to lose this war so that they could win another. The Pikes, Black Suns, Zygerians, and Hutts agreed to this idea of allowing themselves to lose this war so that they could win that other one. But they did it because they were scammers. They were informed by Dooku to maintain an alliance. He didn't specify anything, but he expressed that they could have another chance to win a future war. Essentially, the criminal syndicates took this information and spoke amongst themselves and decided that they would use it to barter with the Republic once the war was finished. Palpatine was in total agreement that the way to win this long-term war with the Jedi was by having an external alliance. In his mind, it would be perfect to build an alliance in the first war, and then when the second one came along, they could make the war larger and more galactic. When it was over, the Empire would have all the territory, and from there, it'd be smooth sailing. What Palpatine never anticipated was the criminal syndicates deciding to use their greed against the Sith. It was truly ironic, because the deal Dooku gave them was really good. If they fought this war with the future CIS, they would have the credits and financial stake in the government that was to come. Despite how much credits this would be, the criminal empires would lose their empires to a government. Instead, they would make a proposition to the Republic once this war was over, knowing that they wouldn't be able to stop the 13 million soldiers and thousands of Jedi. If they could expose Dooku for an exchange in territory, then maybe they could make it out of this with something left. It was a risk on their part, but at least retaining power was better than nothing. When the war came to an end, 3 years after it began, the criminal syndicates tried it. They got into contact with Palpatine, and he manipulated it back into Dooku's favor. Initially, the syndicates seemed like potential Sith allies, but they weren't. They were expendable, and the Sith dealt with them the way they should have. Palpatine kept the criminal leaders on the call for hours and gave Dooku all the time he needed to arrive at their location and exterminate them. He would use his power gap to turn systems in the Outer Rim against the Republic. The biggest benefit of this war was the fact that Dooku could garner allies against the Republic early on. So there were more systems in favor of a separatist government than there would have been otherwise. And with the Outer Rim falling in the Republic control, with new money-hungry businesses and representatives flooding into the territory, the people would soon have more reasons to flee the Republic. Outside of the politics in the Outer Rim, Anakin and Krell were doing terrifically. Krell made a point of emphasis to keep the sometimes overly emotional Anakin away from the war. That had been something they spent a lot of time working on. Anakin's emotions had been a lot more in check since his mother was freed. Pong was able to balance out all the other more transitional issues for Anakin. Despite him being really well educated, thanks to his honors classes, there was always something more for Skywalker to learn, and he was excited about the prospect of constantly learning more about the Force and the galaxy around him. The Great War of the Outer Rim, as it was being called, gave Anakin a lot of time to learn about intergalactic territory. The Jedi also, despite believing that Dooku was nothing more than a political idealist, were keeping their eyes on him. The meetings with the Hutts and the continuous speaking with senators and representatives, even the additional business tycoon, was on their radar. It just didn't make sense for someone like Yoda. He didn't understand where the switch within his former student came from. Anakin was able to spend a lot of time learning this stuff. Since he was so young, when he became a Padawan, his mind was like a sponge. He did spend 2 years with Kenobi as a side instructor, before Obi-Wan took the pleasure of training Barriss Offee when she turned 13. Kenobi gained a lot of confidence when he spent time with Anakin, and due to their close bond, they became like brothers. It only seemed natural for Anakin's only real Jedi friend to be the student Kenobi picked. They already had an established bond, similar to the one between Krell and Anakin before they became an official duo. Anakin was working hard on using 2 lightsabers at this point. While it wasn't common for Jedi to wield 2 weapons, Anakin was dedicated to it because his master was an expert at it. Krell was one of the most formidable duelists in the Order, and it rubbed off very well on his student. Their opinions typically lined up, and allowed the 2 of them to have political discussions, which Anakin would always spend time working on beating his master at. He really took the work hard, play hard mindset and ran with it, For example, Anakin would toy around with mechanics while listening to political podcasts and news sources about the state of the war and the state of the Senate. It gave him some great insight into how to perfect his debating skills against his master. In a way, it was funny. Krell and Anakin would get into intense debates about the state of the galaxy while sparring. It oddly enough gave the two Jedi a chance to focus on something other than the fight, so muscle memory and trust in the Force became exceptionally prevalent between them. That was seriously the best part about this. The two of them, despite being in the moment and actually slamming their blades against each other, weren't focused on the actual fight. Similar to Force helmets younglings train with, they were trusting the Force entirely while speaking about things going on around the galaxy. Due to how highly Anakin held himself next to Krell, he never adopted a superiority complex, or dealt with an ego boost. He was a lot more centralized, ironically, and despite how quickly Anakin excelled through his Padawan studies, he and Krell kept a strong bond with each other, as they partook in missions across the galaxy. When the Clone Wars eventually did begin, Anakin and Pong were running missions out on Rhodia. The two of them didn't even know what happened. With Obi-Wan and Barriss going on investigations and protecting Senator Amidala, the Republic dove in headfirst with its militia military left over from the Great War. Also, from the CIS housing millions of battle droids, the Republic militia did well. That's a joke. They got curb stomped. The Republic showed up for what they thought would be a walk in the park, and the military that won them the Outer Rim was crushed by a combined Trade Federation and Techno-Union fleet. It wasn't even a contest. The Republic limped away and the Senate approved a true military creation bill. Due to Palpatine having more leftover powers from the Great War, they were able to move soundly into another period of war. The only issue is, there are people in the public calling for Palpatine to resign. Not a ton, but the fact that there hadn't been a full-scale war since the foundation of the Republic, and now there were two within the span of one man's administration, it seemed a little odd to some members of the public, though people in the court couldn't complain. They made trillions off the Great War, so what harm could the Clone Wars do? Despite Anakin and Krell getting ready for Skywalker's knighting ceremony, the two of them decided that they would continue to serve together. But there was a bit of an issue. While Krell was all in support of the militia that won the previous war, this was a little different. The clones, in his mind, weren't comparable to real soldiers. To him, they were the sentient version of droids, man-made creations that were designed for one purpose, to kill. And on paper, that was technically the truth. But the biggest difference was the fact that the clones were unique individuals, both personality-wise and in the Force. Anakin initially agreed with his former master, until they got their clone unit. It was at that point when he realized that maybe his master had a couple loose screws in his head. Because the clones instantaneously, upon first contact, showed signs of uniqueness. One didn't need to have Force or be Force sensitive, as Skywalker was, to see it. They were all different. Jumping into the Clone Wars wasn't as seamless as Anakin thought it would be. He thought it would be his former master and apprentice on the front lines, saving the galaxy. Instead, there was almost a rapid change from his master. The worst part is, Krell was still the good Jedi that trained Anakin. He was still warm, compassionate, caring, and loyal. Just not to the clones. He simply didn't regard them as sentient. They were lab creations at best, and fleshy battle droids at worst. His disregard for the clones really bothered Anakin, and he spoke to his friend Barriss about it. Due to their relationship having more time to grow in the years since being younglings, they were usually the first either went to when they felt burdened by something that felt unconquerable. This was one of those things, so when they weren't on the campaign, about 6 months into the Clone Wars, Anakin went to her and they spoke extensively. She asked about the different ways he tried to approach this issue with him, and Anakin told her everything and how none of it worked. She expressed confronting him and demanding a change. It might not work, but it still could. Following their conversation, Anakin would request Pong into the same training room they used every time. When his former instructor entered, Skywalker told him that he had gone far enough. The clones were real men and they deserved to be treated as such, giving his master an ultimatum. If he didn't regard the clones as living beings and treat them differently, then he would leave the division and never speak to him again. This came off really wrong to Krell. Why would Anakin speak to him like that? Pong told Anakin that they needed to win this war. If the Kaminoans built them an army, then they needed to use it the same way the CIS used the droids. Anakin shook his head, telling his master to stop. The Jedi Council spoke with the Senate inside the temple about how the clones should be regarded as living beings. This wasn't just an abnormal way to view the clones, they were living beings. Krell rolled his eyes, crossing his arms and walking towards the door, and Anakin used the Force to close it. He told his master to face him. Pong turned back and unlatched his lightsaber, telling his student that this was enough. He was leading his division the way he wanted to. If Anakin didn't respect that, then he needed to leave it be. Skywalker ignited his blade, telling his master that they didn't need to do this. Krell lunged forward, igniting his weapons and striking at Anakin. Master and apprentice were in a duel for their lives, each of them swinging away at each other. Skywalker took to a defensive stance. He pleaded with Krell. Why did he hate the clones? He shoved down, telling Anakin that he didn't hate them. They were simply not comparable to sentients. They were created in labs, designed to do one thing, which was kill. Anakin called Krell out, telling him that as Jedi, it was their duty to defend them, even if he didn't think so. Krell shoved back, telling him that they were expendable. Anakin responded, telling his master that they would die for him, and Krell shoved Anakin across the room, telling his apprentice that it was within their programming to do it. Every report showed that these clones were nothing more than droids. Sure, they had personalities, but that 3PO unit he built on Tatooine had a personality. The B-ones they killed every day, some of them begged for life. That was personality? No. Did Anakin consider those droids sentient beings? Of course not. Then the clones were no different. He turned, de-igniting his weapons and telling Anakin that if he disagreed, he wasn't welcome to join their next tour. Anakin ran forward to stop his master, before he was lifted off the ground and thrown backwards. It wasn't gentle, but it also wasn't violent. Krell shouted the word, "Enough," and Anakin looked at him with shame. He wished it never came to this. He didn't want there to be a rupture in their bond, but Anakin needed to see they were fighting for something more. There were Republic militias out there. If he wanted to save trooper lives, then that was where to do it, not with the clones. The clones were created to die. That was his sole purpose. If Anakin wanted to be a martyr, then he wasn't going to do it on his time. The clones had a good 10 to 20 years to live after the war. Acting like they were going to go that far with their lives as veterans was silly. Anakin needed to wake up. The clones knew they were expendable. It was time to stop being so righteous about an army designed to fight and die in war. Anakin watched his master leave as Barriss walked in. She was hopeful everything would be alright, but it was far from. When she got to Anakin's side, she asked what happened, and his heart broke. He couldn't fathom it. A few tears slipped from his eyes. He felt betrayed. He told her everything, and, well, everything she didn't already hear. The two of them came up with a strategy. As a Jedi Knight herself, at least in the coming days, she was willing to assist him with this. A few days was too many to wait, though. Krell and his clones jumped out and became the most effective unit in the Grand Army. There was no doubt that he was a great tactician. His tactics just didn't consider the clones surviving. With victory after victory coming for him, Anakin and Barriss needed to get him to change course and start caring for his troopers. They immediately left, taking a T6 shuttle and jumping into hyperspace. The two continued planning. What they didn't expect was for Master Krell to have a terrible vision. The worst part for him was he didn't realize he was changing. His disregard for clone life was manifesting in other ways. He wasn't caring like he used to before about anything. Before the Clone War, he was a caring individual, one that went to great lengths to make sure he took care of those around him. He spent years in the Outer Rim with Anakin helping former slaves like he did with Shmi after the war ended, but now he was losing touch with that Jedi that he used to be. It was very challenging, especially for Anakin. He watched his Jedi Master become a monster, and with this terrible vision, he became convinced that Anakin was betraying him, and that he needed to find a new alliance. If Skywalker and the Jedi were going to fall, then Dooku or someone else should be considered allies. There was another issue, though. Despite Dooku killing the leaders of the former syndicates, their replacements, which were handpicked by Dooku, became obsessed with the power at their command. While they didn't have everything Dooku did, they thought that they could use the droids against their cynical leader. It was a chaotic situation. The addition of the Outer Rim added an extra flair that Palpatine and Dooku had to continuously course correct. As Skywalker and Offee moved on Krell, a peace treaty on Coruscant was disrupted. The criminal syndicates who were aware of the plot, due to the reprogrammed tactical droids, were prepared with a counter. They knew that Dooku was targeting the power grid, but if you want to end a peace treaty, then cut the head off. So they sent the same bombing droids to the Senate building, bombing it and leveling the entire structure, trapping and killing almost everyone inside, especially inside the main chambers. All the senators and representatives were dead, Maz Amedda too, but Palpatine used the Force to keep himself alive. The only issue is, he had to use the Force so extensively, over the time it took for him to get saved by the Jedi, that by the time they found him, 2 weeks after the Senate building fell, he was weak and decrepit. The Jedi called it a miracle, and didn't think anything of it, but Palpatine overexerted himself, and with the Force taking advantage of this, it stripped his power away from him. Palpatine may have survived a 2-week ordeal on nothing but the Force holding millions of pounds of debris off of him, but at what cost? He could no longer use the Force. He was nothing more than a simple man. Palpatine's survival was something the galaxy couldn't believe, but he was so disheartened. Even if he built an evil empire, he couldn't have what he wanted, and it couldn't be eternal. He wouldn't survive everything. He'd be nothing more than simply man. While Palpatine was handling this transformation into a regular person, Anakin and Barriss found Krell on the front lines. Instead of simply waiting for Dooku to contact him, he sent his army without proper instruction to Serenno. In Krell's mind, he would show up, win, and prove himself to Dooku, becoming his new apprentice and joining the ranks of the Sith. These erratic movements made the Council worry about Pong and his apparent descent into madness. The clones cooperated only because they were informed that their orders came from Republic High Command. It was a very messy situation, because clones, especially when Anakin wasn't around, wouldn't dare double-cross Krell. He attacked the fleet at Serenno and made a blitz for the surface of the planet. Barriss and Anakin eventually caught up to them in the middle of their battle. Krell and Anakin's fleet was updated with more vessels, which allowed the fleet to easily go toe-to-toe with the CIS. The two knights saw the ground raiding party make its move as they were rapidly getting to the system. There were a couple light corvettes and cruisers guiding them to the surface. Inside the LAATs, the clones were nervous. Never had they attacked so recklessly before. Inside the cruiser was Krell. He was actually accompanying his troopers to the surface because he wanted to prove himself to Dooku. But of course, he wasn't inside the LAAT. As the knights followed closely behind, they watched the ground assault team get shredded. If it wasn't for the light cruisers and corvettes lying covering fire for their assault, they wouldn't ever hit the ground. Dooku was very confused by this. He was busy trying to figure out why cities hadn't contacted him and why the syndicates seemed to betray him. And then he looked outside and saw a flat cover in the sky. The clones landed, and as they ran out, they were slaughtered by B-1s and B-2s. Inside the Arquentins, Krell told the deckhands to open fire. They rejected in fear of killing their own men. Krell stepped forward and pushed one of them out of the way and ignited his lightsaber, telling them to follow his orders. They listened, and turbo lasers fired at the surface of the planet, shredding battle droids and nearly clipping thousands of clones. Dooku stood still, as his droids were destroyed around him. From above, he could see two lightsabers ignite and leap out of a shuttle as they slammed down in front of him. He watched the clones press forward as Pong told Dooku that he wanted to make an arrangement with him. Dooku wasn't pleased. His home was just attacked, and this was pretty much the opposite of an arrangement. Krell told him he had a vision, one in which the Jedi would fall. Dooku nodded his head, seeing this as a potential outcome as he asked him if he really thought that attacking Serenno would earn him favorability. Krell nodded, expressing that he would prove his abilities as a combat leader. Dooku, fresh after seemingly losing his master and potentially the war due to criminal syndicate greed, ignited his lightsaber and drove his blade forward. Krell blocked as the young Jedi shuttle landed behind the clone lines. Anakin and Barriss got out as they watched Krell and Dooku engage in a fight. They ran in, as Krell and Dooku continued grasping for victory. Anakin leapt forward, igniting two lightsabers and striking down at Dooku, who stepped back and blocked the strike, spinning around and defending himself from Krell. Each strike from Pong was heavier than the last, and it was hard to keep up with three opponents, but Dooku maintained his strength, shoving each of them away. He used the pillars in his courtyard to distract the Jedi, lobbing each of them at another Jedi. It didn't land, but it gave him the opportunity to focus on one Jedi at a time. Barriss was cut across the shoulder. Krell's non-dominant second left hand was cut off. Skywalker's wrist was sliced. None of these strikes left them out of the fight, but they were distracting enough to keep them far from all uniting in one attack. As their fight progressed, the tortured clones of Pong's division pushed past the courtyard and into the city below. Anakin drove his blades forward, while Dooku slipped between Anakin and Krell, blasting Barriss' blade back. Anakin used the Force to stop Dooku from landing a killing blow on her. As Dooku slid under Krell's strikes, his double blade smashed away at him, but he defended himself, slipping between the strikes and jabbing Krell in the stomach, catching him in mid-movement. Krell threw the blades forward before he lost his balance and tipped over. Anakin slipped behind Dooku, striking as Barriss cut the back of his legs. Dooku bent backwards as Anakin jabbed forward, and Barriss dragged her blade across his back and he died almost instantaneously. Anakin looked at Barriss, who nodded at him. Their eyes turned to Pong, who was on his knees, coughing and breathing heavily. He looked over to the young Jedi, and he apologized to Anakin for betraying him. Anakin frowned. He looked at the clones, the good soldiers they had fought with. He told Krell that he only betrayed himself. There was no point in lecturing him. He knew what he did. Pong understood how the war brought the worst out of him, and it left him with shame and disappointment in himself. Anakin thought about being cruel, about neglecting his master in his final moments, but he decided not to, especially after 2 weeks of trying to find him. He lowered himself to his master's side, as he expressed that his legacy might not be what he wanted it to be viewed as, especially by the men he served with. But Anakin promised that in his memory, he'd make sure the men of their division were properly taken care of. Krell nodded his head. He thanked his student, telling him that perhaps there was a future where the Jedi escaped their peril. One where Anakin, as the future, could cultivate a new generation. Pong smiled and told Anakin that he would always be the best of them, as he slowly breathed and lost his last breath. Anakin lowered Krell to the ground. It felt so bittersweet as he looked at Barriss. He was still mad at his master, but he still would rather be present for the final moments than be angry. Across the galaxy at the same time, Palpatine, upon coming to terms with his predicament, decided that a life of nothingness was not meant for him. To be mortal was a waste of life, and to have no power was worth nothing. He could also see a temple guard or two outside the room, so he pulled his own plug before anyone could do it for him. In his mind, it was on his terms, not the Jedi, because he thought they were here to kill him, when after all, it was the Force that made the decision for him. Without the Galactic Senate, or the Chancellor, the Republic was fragile, but there were military leaders that were more than capable of taking command, while the Republic systems picked new representatives for their government. The War Committee that took command over the Republic did so with ease. Despite Serenno falling, it was the Republic that won the war. The criminal syndicates that had long-standing alliances with the CIS and Dooku were the downfall of their war effort. They attempted greed, and with their tactical droids, they tried to take control over the droid armies. Instead, General Grievous, after the Raxus Senate was destroyed, laid waste to the Outer Rim. The people of the area couldn't catch a break, and that was devastating, especially after the liberation. But it was because they didn't side with the Republic that they faced these struggles, at least according to the Republic War Committee. The Clone Wars didn't come to an end anytime soon. Following the fall of Serenno, it carried on for 3 more years, but they weren't as violent as the first 2 years. The war itself became more of a grudge match with skirmishes. When it was all said and done, the Jedi obtained control over new locations and were providing relief. Anakin, who became an instructor, was able to teach his student all the things he learned from Krell's shortcomings, especially at the end of his time as an instructor. Palpatine's mystery unaliving baffled the public for months, but they moved on with commanding from the War Committee, which utilized the best attributes of the Republic military, while stripping command away from the Jedi. At the end of the war, the criminal syndicates were nothing but shambles, and the Republic was all that remained to fix problems that were left behind. Anakin did a personal deep dive on his instructor, and what may have caused him to fall into darkness. As he learned, during eras of combat, especially when he was near it, Pong's judgment became extremely clouded. He always relied on the helping others aspect of such conflicts, but when a being that he didn't consider worthy of sentience was added to the equation, it almost drove him to madness. Krell thought he was doing the right thing, and in a way, from Anakin's perspective, it helped end the war, but the cost was devastating. Anakin following the war would be the #1 advocate for the clone rights, and with a new Senate full of brand new senators and representatives, he was able to get a bill going. He named it after the division he and his master served with, a way to commemorate all the men that were ruthlessly sacrificed under Krell's command, and of course those who fought with the survivors of the Krell era. Anakin's time as a Jedi following the war would be positive. It would include time with his mom, time with friends such as Barriss and Obi-Wan, as well as time with his multitude of students. Following Ahsoka, he would train a young Wookiee named Gungi. After Anakin joined the Council, he trained many other students in the Jedi expansion era. Before his death, Grogu would be one of his final students. His adoration for teaching would be the defining feat of Anakin's legacy, one founded in the restructuring of the Outer Rim and the eternal rebirth of the Jedi Order. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons:
Benjamin Wells, Ozpin, Angel Dust, Alexandra Reese, The Beginning and End, Django Fat Clone, Nick5098, INTJ Recluse, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galaxy Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granity Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewa670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Knox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tam, Johnny DeGuin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Galaxy 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Photos Legacy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, The Man 3 First Names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. So we got Krell here, and we all love Krell. We don't love Krell, we all hate him. But I really wanted to approach this as a Krell that cared. A Krell that before the Clone Wars was really kind of an endearing creature, a sentient that cared about life and showed a lot of compassion. But the real kicker for Krell was what happened in the Clone Wars, and I wanted to kind of cover this like Sentinel Prime-esque change from like Dark of the Moon that you see in him during this evolution, which is why I made the kind of reference to Dark of the Moon. But with this, I really wanted to kind of cover what could have been what led to Pong's just descent into madness, which is this idea that the clones not being sentient in his mind didn't hold actual value for him as a leader. And so that's kind of where I went with this. This subversion of Krell at the beginning of the training, and then you see him develop into this cruel monster at the end, even fighting his apprentice with almost a crazed madness about him. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.